Hey everybody, it's Libby again with Fearlessness. What is fearlessness? It's that underlying grit that empowers us as entrepreneurs to forge ahead. Even when hope seems distant, it's the courage to walk through the fires of hell, knowing that we're going to come out better and stronger on the other side. Stay tuned and learn how to get fearlessness. I'm your host, Libby DeLucien, and today we have a guest that's very far away. Do you go by Chris or Christopher?
Chris. Chris is fine.
Chris. Okay, that's easy to remember because my husband's name is Chris. So, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Chris Schwab. I am a cleaning business owner. We are based in DC, but I live over in Japan, in Yokohama, which if you ever heard of Yokohama tires, that's the only famous thing about our city. So that's where we're based. And I also run a VA company, Innova Local, that provides VAs for cleaning business owners. So what I do is very focused on the cleaning industry as a cleaning business owner, but also as a provider for cleaners. So that's the very quick 30-second business bio.
Awesome. Love that. I have so many questions. I'm a huge fan of remote, like with WootRecruit, and my cleaning company Organize It. And then we have Service Cart. I probably have about 22 remote employees that are just remote, not to mention our field staff. So love remote. And so I want to dive into that. And then love that you're like managing a company in DC from Japan. like let's just talk about that. Like we'll talk about the remote like VAs over on the WootRecruit YouTube channel. We'll get deeper over there, but I want to talk about like the entrepreneur struggle running a remote. First, why did you do it?
Yeah, sure. So it was out of necessity rather than any sort of innovation. Back in 2016, when I started my cleaning company, I started it out of a need to find a way to be with my wife. My wife, girlfriend at the time, of course, was over in Japan, and I was over in DC in university. At that time, there were remote jobs, but they were the typical travel blogger or SEO writer or web developer type jobs, and I didn't have any of those skills. So basically, the remote job just wasn't an option for me. So I figured there was a way to do this, to have this relationship and move to Japan, but maybe it was an unconventional path. And so like many of my kind of generation of cleaning business owners, kind of 2016 to 20, I found a case study on Reddit that was very famous at the time for how to start a cleaning company. And I thought, screw it, I'm going to try it over summer and just see what it works, right?
And you got this off Reddit.
Yeah. So there's a case study. If you search local case study Reddit, it'll come up. It's a little older now, so you would want to find updated versions. But that was the inspiration for me and some other cleaning business owners to get into the industry, was to see that this sort of thing was possible. But that was very focused on just building it locally in your area. There was nothing kind of remote about it. But anyway, I built the cleaning company and I got it to a stage where it was uncomfortably busy a little bit too quickly. And I was just kind of overwhelmed. So I wasn't even moving yet. I was just like, oh my God, I need help in the office, but I can't afford office help because I don't make enough profit to pay someone.
Totally been there.
Yeah, that's a fun stage to be at. Derek Christian, a great, I always mention this, he's a great guy in our industry. He calls it the Valley of Despair.
Yes,
and I love
there are many valleys of despair. I feel like that's only one of the valleys of despair.
Oh, there's always surprises when you get to the next stage. So I was kind of at that stage and I just thought, I need help. I can't afford help. I got to find some other way to do this. At the time, Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, was very big, and he talked a lot about VAs. And I just thought, okay, maybe he talks about it for e-commerce and fulfillment and so on, but there's no reason I can't find an amazing office manager who's willing to work remotely for my cleaning company too. There's no reason that wouldn't work, right? And so I found two really great VAs actually who had never done that for a cleaning company, but were willing to try it with me. And it worked really well. So a week after I onboarded them, which in hindsight, I don't recommend to anyone, but a week after I onboarded them, I took like a week-long trip to Japan and ignored my business. And when I came back, it was fine. So surprisingly fine. They took great care of it. And so I decided after that week test that, of March the next year, this was in November, so 4 months later, I was going to fully move full time. And I moved full time in March 2017, and I haven't been back to DC a single time since 2017. So that's
Wow.
kind of the, yeah.
And you said you started your cleaning company in 2016?
16. Yep, that's right.
You don't look old enough to have started it in 2016. I'm sorry. I would assume you're like my husband. He is younger than me, but he looks so young.
It's the camera.
People mistake him as my child sometimes. So it's the ongoing joke with our friends when they introduce us in a group of people. They're like, "Oh, this is Libby, and this is her son Chris," and then he's like, "Oh no, her husband." Like it's one of our friends. He does it on purpose to people, and it so confuses like people that we meet because they're like, "It could be, but maybe," because I do have a 26-year-old son as well, but you guys have great genes, right? It's in your genes, but my husband contributes to he doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink. He's very fit, so that's what he says.
He's doing good.
Good. Yeah. So I love that story, and of starting those. So starting the business and then leaning into remote, and that was very early. Like that was pre-COVID, so that was kind of not heard of.
Yeah, we were the second. I was the second person doing that I know about. You may have heard of him. I'm not sure. He's not too active in our groups, but there's a really great guy called Neil Park. He runs a cleaning company in California called Made This. And when I was just starting, I was on a podcast called Grow My Cleaning Company by Mike Campion, who's another he's a big name in our industry. And after I talked to him about my plan to move to Japan, I didn't do it yet. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I talked to him about that on the call. He mentioned this guy he knew from California who was living abroad in Africa or something at the time, and he'd traveling all around, and he has a cleaning company. And I thought, how was that possible? How could he do that? And so Mike connected me with this guy Neil, and Neil was gracious enough to get up at like a really awkward time for him and talk to this new cleaning business owner and walk him through how he did that. And so he was kind of the first one. I really want to give credit to him because he unintentionally, I think, started somewhat of a movement indirectly of remote cleaning businesses. So he was kind of the first. Sorry.
That's okay. We just launched a location that's 100% remote. So I have my cleaning company in Fort Myers, but we just launched a 100% remote location. And in Texas, we're launching another one in Oklahoma next month. And then I'm going to launch a third one in Georgia at the end of the summer.
Wow, you're busy.
Yes, we're busy. Yes. So I love the idea of remote. So let's talk about challenges. Like, what were some of the challenges that you ran into versus traditional, like office setting, management of staff, entrepreneur issues, like struggles, where we have those traditional struggles? What were some of the other struggles that you faced doing it the non-traditional way, like doing it different? And did you have any naysayers also? I would love to know. Did you have any people saying like, "You're crazy, you can't do this"?
Many. Apologies about the voice. I had a cold yesterday. I thought it was better. It'll get better in a sec. There's a lot to say there, I think. So I didn't have naysayers per se because I didn't tell anyone I was building a cleaning company at first. I kept it a secret the first 6 months. I'm very much an advocate for building quietly and then building something and then sharing it. I know there's a lot of people who are very big on kind of public accountability, but I really like the quiet, hardworking, building something type of thing and then showcasing it to the world. So that was kind of the approach I took. That was not intentional at that time. That's just the way it happened. But I didn't have any naysayers, fortunately. I think people were interested. I did periodically share kind of updates on my cleaning company in some of the online communities that we're members of. And so people were kind of interested more than anything, but they weren't like, you can't do that, or it was mostly kind of like, how would that work? I've never thought about that. It was kind of curiosity, I think, for most people. It was just, okay, well, you probably fail, but tell me how you do it if you succeed, right? So I would say not too many naysayers, but there is a lot of differences between this and the traditional model that um, back in 2016 were very obvious, but I would say are less obvious in 2024 because of the tools and softwares that we all have access to. The lines are kind of blurring between physical and digital cleaning businesses. So I would say the big one is how you manage your team. That's probably the biggest single difference I would say in a remote versus a physical cleaning company with an office, right? With an office, everyone's going into an office to get supplies, to check in for the day before they head out to their jobs usually, right? So there's
Do you actually have an office or no?
no.
Okay.
Although people have thought I did, so some owners who were in DC at the time went to our address listed in our Google My Business, which was just my residential flat, but they thought it was our office. So they said they drop into the office, and there's no office to drop into. So no, the big difference really is how you manage the teams, number one, I would say, and how you manage difficult situations like emergencies. So with a team that's on site, there's a central location that everyone's meeting and discussing, and there's an opportunity for there to be a team culture. In my cleaning company, because we don't have an office and because we're primarily contractors, they typically go from their house straight to the customer's home, and then they go back at the end of the day to their house. So the cleaners don't typically meet each other. So there's not much of a company culture in that sense. They have great relationships with the office staff and with me, but they don't know each other that well. So I'd say that's one big difference is having a company culture versus everyone doing their own thing. I think in remote companies, everyone tends to do their own thing because it's easier. We're all just, well, give us the job, we'll go do it, and then we'll let you know how it went, right? That it's very simple in that sense, I think. But the other big one really is around how you handle emergencies. Again, so if you're an owner with an office manager and an office on site, people would call into your business line or they would visit you to resolve any issues, and that's fine. But if you're like me living in Japan and there's a 13-hour time zone difference between your cleaning company and you, if there's an emergency at 2 p.m. EST, that's 3 a.m. my time, right? So
you're going to be asleep.
Right. And my phone is on Do Not Disturb all the time, even when I'm awake. So I'm not going to hear it. So you have to develop a certain set of very ironclad protocols, what I call UTBO protocols, for how you actually handle any situation or emergencies. So you need to foster a sense of great independence with your team and your office manager, far more than you would have to with a traditional cleaning company. So there's a lot to say in every different area, from marketing to sales to operations. But I think those are two very big ones that I might want to highlight for today.
Yeah, that is great feedback. I've learned a lot. WootRecruit is 100% remote. There is no office. We call it our virtual office. And, we have a decent amount of employees here. I think, we have about 20 people, or no, 19. And so over the last 3 years, mainly just the last 2, because the first year of all 3 years, which was the year like we were founded, it was just me and Paul trying to figure out stuff, and we had like one person helping us, and then we added my husband. But we've grown so much, over the last 2 years, really. I've had to do a lot of growing and learning about remote. Right. Because it's not like we work at Chick-fil-A and we can just say, hey, how's your day, next to the water cooler, or when we're clocking in. We come to work, and culture is the byproduct of work in a remote setting, because we come to work. Yeah. Where in settings, culture could happen first. Culture happens at the water cooler. It happens naturally. Right. Where in a remote setting, to me, it doesn't necessarily happen naturally. It's intentional. It's planned. It's the extra things. There's a great book called Running Remote. I'm not sure if you've read it.
Never heard of it.
It's a really good book. He talks about levels of remote teams. He's very into remote. And then as I learned and I adapted the way I thought out of the traditional sense, what I found was one of the reasons I was failing in some certain aspects of the cleaning company is because I was trying to run it like a traditional company. And in reality, our technicians were remote employees. Because they don't come to the office. They don't come in the morning. We barely see them. So when I started to think about it like that, like I started to run my cleaning company like a remote company, even though we have an office that nobody comes to, our culture started to get better. And it was so weird. For a little bit, I had better culture, stronger culture in WootRecruit, which is 100% remote with no office. And the culture was better there than in my actual home service company with an office.
You know
Because
what?
it was intentional.
That makes perfect sense to me. It's the same for my VA company, Nova Local. Because we started it remotely, the team grew that way, right? So Nova Local is a fully remote company, just like WootRecruit, and we have a great company culture. So I know exactly what you're saying. It can be industry dependent a little bit, right?
Yeah. And I was trying to overhear, like taking advice from my cleaning company that was more traditional sense. It was coming from advice that like where the cleaners came in every day, came back every night. And I'm kind of like, wait a minute, they're remote. Like we could go 2 weeks without seeing anybody sometimes. And so when we started to make that shift and have more intentionality about like one-to-ones and communication and how we interacted, it changed a lot of stuff for us. And we actually just downsized our office because I had this big office with 6 rooms, a conference room, and a lobby. And there was one person sitting in that office. I'm like, I had to put my ego aside and say, I don't need a big office to validate my worth as a business owner. And it was 100% ego driven.
Yeah, that's a big one. What do you really need? You can run it much more leaner, and that's one of the beautiful advantages of this model. So save the money and take the advantage, set aside the ego.
Yeah, I set aside my ego. And I told my husband, I said, man, I feel like I'm tying my self-worth as a business owner to this office. And it had the core values on the wall and all the plants and all that pretty stuff that looked good in pictures. But I'm like, I don't need this. I'm wasting a substantial amount of money when we could do other things with this money. Like we could do more things with the technicians. We could have more better benefits. We could do so much more than just have a office for nothing. And the one person that was sitting in there is more than happy to work from home. She had the benefit anyways. She just wasn't taking advantage of it. Mm-hmm. And so now pretty much we just have a storage room. It's a glorified storage room. It's a shared office space, one room that's kind of just holding supplies.
Yeah, that's all you really need it for, and that's fine. That's the way to go, I think, because you're an employee model, right? Not a contractor.
Yes, we're an employee model.
Yeah, so you do need at least storage for the supplies. That's fine.
Yeah. So it's been great as the owner. Like I'm like, whoa, I cut out like 3 or 4 bills. I think I cut out $2,500 a month out of my expenses. A couple bills that I didn't have to even pay attention to anymore by just downsizing the office space. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because when we went to remote, my manager is doing more one-to-ones now remotely than she was doing when we were in person, because she was waiting for someone to show up to see how they were doing, right? By chance. But with remote, it's intentional. She's planned them. They're on the calendar. So she's doing more of them.
That's a good point. Yes. You're more intentional. You're more in control of the schedule. I like that. I think that's true. And I think what's interesting too is you put, and I'm curious if you find this too in a leadership position with remote companies. So for me, I have a set of core values that I find very important in life. Whether that's around work-life balance or integrity or whatever. And we all have core values that we really attach a lot of meaning to. And we can put them on the walls, but if we can internalize them and display them in a leadership role, I think that's where a lot of the magic starts to happen. And I think remote teams are very interesting from a leadership perspective because your face time is limited with each team member. You only have a small window to really be an impactful leader for that person and to foster accountability, to foster independence, to foster the values that you want in your company. So I'm curious, in your companies, do you feel like your leadership style has had to change in any way from
100%.
before you were remote to now that you are? Yeah.
100%. It's made me a better leader because it's made me a better leader. I feel like when I had an office, it was kind of like a little bit lazy, kind of like, oh, I don't want to drive to the office today, or I'm not going to go to my office today. So I was missing some stuff here and there, or I'd go in my office and close the door, right? And then the door's closed, so you don't see people, you don't interact. But in a remote room, so we use Slack and WootRecruit and WhatsApp in my cleaning company, the door's always open. So I feel like it's changed me as a leader. It's made me a better communicator because sometimes if you're communicating in email or text, there's no expression, there's no tone. You have to be more thorough in your words. So it has 100% made me a better leader, a better listener. And to make me, I'm like more aware, with what's going on. And also I feel like I'm more structured, right? And it is hard. Like sometimes I've had to fire people over Zoom and people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, well, you do it the same way you do it in person. But I think it's also forced me as a leader to be more intentional and more organized. Like I'm scheduling one-to-ones with every single employee. I was doing them monthly, and now we scaled back to we're going to do quarterly. And those direct reports are going to do them monthly. But just the fact that you can pick up the phone and have a conversation, it's intentional, it's planned, it's really up-leveled me with having a connection with every single person in the company. And it's almost like I'm a mini coach doing mini Zoom coaching calls with my own staff.
I think you are.
And
sorry, go for it.
No, it's just changed a lot for us. And the other challenge, though, is getting your current office staff to realize that. So in WootRecruit, everybody's remote. They've come from remote. But with Organize It, my office staff wasn't remote, like knowledgeable.
Sure.
And so to say, hey, you can work from home, for them, they had to learn that I have to over communicate now. Like I can't assume something. I can't wait for them to show up or reach out to me because I'm never going to see them. And so they didn't get that at first. I kind of had to say like, hey, this was the deal. If we were going to go remote, you have to do this and that. It's different. It's not harder. It's different managing the cleaning staff.
You gave me a lot to say there. Oh man, we're diving into the weeds now of remote management. One thing I would say, just to what you said, I think is really interesting to return to your earlier question about the difference between traditional and remote models. I think there's one more I'd like to highlight for everyone. You said this, you stated this in a different way, but the team and your managers have to learn a higher degree of independence too, because you're not there sitting next to them. They can't, by design, they can't defer to you every time there's a small issue. So you have to be able to foster a greater sense of independence with the people who are on your team, who report to you, where they can actually do mistakes. They can make mistakes and you won't punish them for them because you understand that they're taking that lead role onto themselves and they're not going to be perfect. So you have to be able to change the level of control that you're comfortable with in your company and with the people below you. So that's a really, really big one that I see a lot of owners who struggle with.
I love this topic.
Don't want control.
There you go. That's where I love this topic. So everybody asks me all the time because again, I have Lisa, Jennifer, Billy, Jonette. I have 5 remote employees with Organize It. And so they always ask me, like other cleaning business owners, well, how do you do it? Like, how do you know they're working all day? I'm like, I don't. It's called trust. Like it's trust. There's a level of control I have to give up, right? There's a level of trust though, that they can handle it. And if they can't, then we're going to see it. but like giving up that control when so many people have come from a, like, I can look over your shoulder and see what you're doing. Don't do it like that. Or I can hear you on the phone. Next time, do it like this. You don't get that benefit, right? But you get the benefit of freedom. I am such a remote advocate, because I can work from here or my other house in Georgia or wherever I want. So can all of our employees. They can work from wherever they want. Now they have to work at a desk. They can't work on the beach. They can go to the beach when they're done. But we won't tell them that I'm at the beach. I just, so, but it's the control factor that so many business owners struggle with. So what is your tip on that? I mean, I have my own view, but I want to hear your tip on that trust and control that people want to go remote, but they always say, oh, it didn't work for me.
So I will give a very general answer. I typically, when I talk with owners, it's one-on-one, so I tailor it to their unique cleaning company. But on a very general level, when you're trying to transition to a remote cleaning business, one of the major things you're going to have to do is a preparatory phase for your cleaning company before you go remote. You can't just hire an office manager and write like a couple SOPs and then do it. That really would be not ideal. And I'm telling you from experience in my own cleaning company, I went through a tough phase of figuring this out, and I don't want people to go through the same phase. And so generally, there's kind of a 5 or 6 step process that you can go through before you're really ready to make that transition. If you're starting from day one remote, it's a little different, but most of us already have a cleaning company that's somewhat traditional. So I'm going to answer from the perspective of someone who wants to turn their company from non-remote to remote. So if you really want to do that transition, the first thing you're going to want to do is kind of a brain dump, what I call it. It's not a pretty name for it, but essentially it's a brain dump of all the different tasks that you as the owner, and if you have an office manager, that your office manager does. It doesn't need to be fully exhaustive. You don't need to write every tiny little thing they do out, but you really want to write out categories of tasks that you and the office team are doing, like marketing, sales, operational tasks, tasks related to managing your teams, tasks related to customer service, to your website, the big areas that you're doing every day. You want to just get all those tasks out onto a piece of paper, into a Word doc. It doesn't really matter, but you want to get them out of your head, and you want to start organizing them into workflows. So you want to have mini workflows for each area of the company that you can run an instance of and get the same result relatively the same each time. So there's a program that I recommend people use if they're a beginner to this called process.street. That's the website URL, process.st. And what it is it allows you to create repeatable checklists for each task that you need to accomplish in your business. So for example, in WootRecruit, you have different stages of the hiring process that you can move people through, right? So process.street would turn that into a checklist, and you'd be able to tick off the checklist at each point of that process. And so when you tick off the final checklist, the person is hired and onboarded, right? So you can do this for any task that you want to do in your company. This is a painful, boring stage to get through. It's going to take you a couple
This is
weeks.
my favorite part of business. So this is the organizer side of me.
Right.
Like,
but the good thing is, you only have to do it once. You might update it bit by bit now and then, but you have to get the initial junk out and organized. So we have so much information that we carry around in our heads, just like in our homes. We have 80% of the stuff we don't really need, but we have to actually organize it to find out what we do need and what we can get rid of. But it's the same for our companies and the same for our tasks and our processes. So you want to get the information out, you want to get it organized, and you want to start organizing them into repeatable checklists. This is the kind of SOP creation phase for your business. Once you've done that, then you're able to start finding the weak links that are going to appear in your company, because you'll have organized all of these things. And then when you go to run them and use these checklists in reality, you're going to find that reality and your checklists don't actually agree. There's going to be a gap between what is actually happening and what should be happening on that checklist that you've just created. And this is a really important part that you need to resolve before you go remote, because if you resolve all of these gaps that you identify in your cleaning company before you go remote, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache, a lot of emergencies, a lot of late nights later on. So there's this kind of intermediary step you're going to go through where you're going to create all your SOPs. Then you're going to test them out. You're not going to go remote. You're going to test them out for maybe a month or 3 months. It really depends on you, how long you feel comfortable with. I'd recommend at least a month, though, where you actually try and run everything in your company based off of those checklists. And then you identify where things are not working and you update those checklists. And once they're updated and they're pretty smooth and they're kind of 85% accurate, that's when you want to introduce them to your office manager or your VA. And you have them use those checklists too while you're still there, actually in the company in the same time zone. You haven't left yet, right? And you want to actually have them do it as if you're remote and you're not available, and see where they mess up, and then correct that with them live at the time. So you guys want to do what's kind of called a dry test run, where you're actually still with them there fixing the issues, and it's not an emergency yet. And once you've kind of done that test run together for a week or a month, and they start to feel confident because you're working with them closely on it, then you can do a real test run where you might go away for a weekend, or you might go away for a week or 2 weeks, and you actually let your office manager do it without you. You're very available if they need you, because there's a confidence building stage that they're going to have to go through to actually feel confident and independent enough to do it without you. But you're going to let them actually do it for a few days by themselves without you there, and see how they do, and get together and be understanding of all the mistakes that are made. Because in this initial phase, the mistakes that they made are your mistakes. They're oversights or gaps that you haven't identified yet as the owner, and you haven't sufficiently prepared them for. So you're going to do this real life dry test run with them for a few days. And the last big step, I would say, is one that's really about fostering independence, is how you handle mistakes and how you handle emergency situations. So we have a set of protocols we call the uh-oh protocols for when something's wrong. Yeah, uh-oh.
I love that.
Exactly. You know the feeling. And this is two things. It's how we communicate during emergencies. You want to get very clear on how you want them to communicate and what an emergency is. So if a cleaner really, for whatever reason, really messes something up in a client's home, that's frustrating, and we need to correct that for them, but it's not an emergency. So please don't wake me up at 3 a.m. You can put it in the Slack chat and let me know what happened, and then I can tackle that the next day. But that's not an emergency, and you should not be coming to me with that at a strange time of day. So you actually have to define what an emergency really is and what an emergency is not. So that's a very important one. And the second component of that is what's called, is this a PG show or we?
Oh, no.
Good. Okay, good. What's called a fuck-up fund. And a fuck-up fund is a fund that we give all our office.
That is awesome.
Yeah. I just wanted to check first. It's a fuck-up fund that we give each of our managers, and they have a fund that they can dip into to correct any mistakes every week without even notifying me at all. I don't want to know. And so whatever your company's budget is, you would decide how big your fuck-up fund is. It might be $200 a week, it might be $300 a week, or whatever. But give your VA or office manager a fund that they can dip into to refund a customer, or to pay a team a little extra, or to try a new software out for hiring. Hint, hint. Right? Or whatever they want to use it for. Give them that fund separately for business expenses that they can tap into and use, and they don't need to tell you about it at all. And what this does is it lets them know they're in charge of the day-to-day, and they don't have to come to you like a scolded child every time there's a mistake. They can just correct it and move on with their day. And I find this one to be really important because it really lets them step up into a leadership role and lets you step back to manage the managers rather than having to step in every time there's a problem. So once you've done these steps, you're ready to really go remote. There's a lot more I can talk about, from systems optimization to remote hiring to marketing and all this stuff. But at a very general level, you're going to want to create your SOPs. You're going to want to test them out. You're going to want to do several rounds of dry runs, and you're going to want to foster independence with your team. If you can do those 4 things, I think you'll do very well when you finally transition remote. There's still going to be stuff that's going to happen that you're not aware of, but you'll be 80% of the way there.
So you were totally talking my love language, which is organizing and SOPs and playbooks. I exactly tell people that's why they failed the first time, is that running remote, having remote staff or VAs or employees, whatever you want to call them, takes another level of organization that most business owners do not have.
Yeah.
And it was exactly what you just described. You just did a way better job of describing it.
And you don't have to use them forever too. My office managers have worked with me for years, so we have those checklists, those SOPs, but now they've memorized them, right? So they don't have to use them for everything anymore. But having the initial creation phase is so important for you and them. So just
you should see how we planned and organized everything, because I hired 2 assistants on the same day, because I interviewed 2 people for my personal assistant, my executive assistant, that were so great that I wanted both of them. But I had prepped weeks in advance to kind of help with that process. And I feel like that's why people struggle or it doesn't work, because when we hire remote, they're just not going to come fix everything. Like, that doesn't even exist in a real in-person employee. So they're not going to just come fix everything and create all your SOPs and know what to do if there's any downtime. So it takes another level of organization that takes effort, but we should be doing that anyways as a business owner, whether our team is in person or remote. It's just with remote, it requires this for success.
Right. It forces you to shore up those weaknesses in a way that being on site wouldn't. And I think a big part of that's such a good point you mentioned there. So when you're on site, when you're the owner, you can just jump in and fix stuff on the spot. And you might not even realize how much you're having to jump in and fix stuff, because that's your normal mode that you're in as business owner, right? And you have to learn to step out of that mode when you go remote and actually start to find a little more balance in your life and create a clear division between your business and the rest of your life. And I think as local business owners, especially when we're on site, there really isn't a division. Like, our kids might be coming into the office, or, like, there's just, the division kind of exists, but not really. And you have to really firmly create that when you actually do make that transition to a remote model. So, yeah.
I love this. And I think probably the one key factor why I was even remotely successful in doing remote was because of the level of documentation I have for our processes and our systems and our playbooks. I was doing this years ago. I mean, our technicians, our cleaning technicians, I have a whole app built out of how they handle anything. Like, I'm driving to the customer's house and I get a flat tire, I break down. Like, I've created those SOPs over years, and I did the same thing for the office. So when we did go remote, it wasn't hard for me to scale or wrap my brain around how organized I needed to be as the owner when it came to documenting and capturing those processes, because it's my jam. It's what I love to do. Go ahead.
I might be misremembering, but do you have the Marie Kondo certification, don't you?
Yeah. So my cleaning company, we're known as the most organized cleaning company in the world.
I love it.
That's our tagline. And the name of my company is called Organize It. And so I am Marie Kondo certified. I hold the second highest status of her certification. I can't remember what it's, platinum, I think. So I'm a big Marie Kondo fan. So I love that style of organizing and the mindset and the approach of, like, if it doesn't serve you, let it go. And I could get into a whole organizing, like, we're the most consumption-based country in the world. And like when you said, we don't even use 80% of the stuff we have. I'm like, yeah, no, we don't. I have a whole YouTube channel on organizing over on Organize It, the YouTube channel. So I love this, and it's really helped me to grow and scale. So it's helped me grow and scale my business. But until I could learn how to control my organizing and micromanaging, It actually enabled me in business. It's what slowed me down. It was my bottleneck because I needed everything perfect and I was the only one that could do it. And I wanted all the binders to be the same color, facing the same direction. It was a little neurotic. And until I could learn that it didn't have to be perfect, but I needed to have it documented, no matter how good or bad it was. The organizing side of me is what's been able to grow multiple businesses and scale them because I'm good at organizing and capturing stuff. But until I could learn to harness it, it was actually what was debilitating me.
Ooh, that's so interesting. I see a lot of similar things with the minimalist trend on YouTube and Pinterest and so on, where minimalism as a philosophy is about finding what's important to you. But the way people express that on social media is a form of control. They're trying to control everything. They're trying to have a minimalist aesthetic. They're trying to have the perfect minimalist backpack or whatever. They're actually using it to control everything rather than to let go and find out what's important. It's really interesting, right? When I was really thinking about that as you were explaining how you were using that as a way to micromanage in your company and make everything perfect. I was like, wow, this is interesting. Now we're getting philosophical here, but
yeah, I mean, it's what kept me from growing. I mean, I was my problem, which we were always our problem, but business is messy. And so sometimes we just have to do it messy, and I needed it perfect. And so I always call it, the term helicopter moms, I call it like, are you a helicopter owner? Are you like hovering around the people? And so with remote, you can't do that. You could, but you would drive yourself crazy, and you're always going to think they're not working. So you can't do it. And until you can get over that control factor and let go and know that, yes, I have to be organized. I have to have the things ready. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I can't micromanage. You can't be free. Like you can't even grow. You're going to stunt your own growth.
One more thought I wanted to share quickly on that might be helpful to some. This is a little bit unconventional, I know, but
I'm an unconventional kind of person.
Good. Then maybe you'll get me on this one. So, for me as an owner, this is a question I get a lot in my VA company when clients sign up: is how do I know my VA is doing work? We keep time logs and everything so we can verify it, but they get that question a lot. Is like, how do I know people are doing the work? And my personal approach is, I don't care if someone's working exactly 8 hours a day. I actually don't care. What I care about is the work that comes in is done to a high standard, and they step up and take care of things that need to be taken care of. If they do that, I don't need them to sit down at a desk staring at a screen for 8 hours. It doesn't matter to me. No. I care about the result that I'm trying to achieve. I don't care about that specific hourly rate and their efficiency for each hour that they work. Did they do what they need to do to a high standard and make everyone happy? If they did, that's great. You don't need that extra accountability if everything's being done.
And I 100% agree, because I mean, I encourage all of our remote to get up and go take a walk. Like right now we're doing a challenge inside of WootRecruit, a health challenge, and where it's 30 minutes of exercise a day. And I don't even care if they do it on company time. I'm like, do it on company time. I don't care, because you're just going to be better. Like, to sit in this chair for 8 hours exhausts me. So please take a break. Work at a high capacity when you're working, and all we measure is output. That's it. I don't care how you do it. Oh, we run asynchronous. So I could talk about this topic all day long. I love asynchronous. And I say the word asynchronous, and people will run away from me. They're like, that's actually how I lost my partner, Paul, who was the other owner of WootRecruit, and I bought him out. I wanted an asynchronous work style, and he was not comfortable with that. And that's why I love remote, because I love asynchronous. Like, in Organize It, they're supposed to work, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, whatever their schedule is. But I'll see Gabby working till 7 o'clock at night because she just wanted to. Like, oh, thanks, Gabby. She's like, yeah, I saw some emails come in. I was just going to check them. I was like, all right, well, like, I don't ask her what she's doing during the daytime, but like, she was working on Saturday. I saw her talking to one of the technicians and asked a question. And we don't ask them for that, but we give them the freedom and flexibility and the trust.
Yep. That's it.
I know you're going to do your job. I trust you to do your job. And if you don't, I will see it and we will take care of that. But like, you get so much in return if you give that freedom and that trust. So we have been on for 45 minutes and I am dying to ask you about culture in remote settings, but we're going to go over to the WootRecruit YouTube channel and talk about like the specifics of hiring a VA and how do you build culture when it comes to remote. So we're going to wrap this up because I could go on all day with you on remote setting. But let's wrap it up. We'll make sure to put all of Chris's information in our show notes so that you can find him on social media and his website. But guys, that's a wrap into the heart of fearlessness. Remember, every step we take is a move towards our own strength and courage. Remember to keep walking through those fires because on the other side lies a version of yourself that's unstoppable. I'm Libby, reminding you to embrace your fearlessness. Until next time, stay brave, stay bold, and keep pushing forward.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you.